Doki Doki Literature Club is a very interesting experiment. Originally it came out free, and while not a game, I did talk about it. I've been considering going over and re-reviewing some of my old games from my first season for a while now, if I'm honest. Why does Doki Doki get this special treatment? Well, first off, this isn't the only game I'm going to be reviewing and getting the special treatment. I decided to hit up Super Mario 64 as well before this video, but why rematch with Doki Doki? Well, mostly because there's a newer version of the game out fall 2021. Doki Doki Literature Club Plus is what it's called. So the question is, do I really want to play this updated version with more content in it? Oh, of course I do. I can't get enough of this crap. Look, when I first watched the game being played way back when, I had to play it for myself and talk about it. And then depression hit me pretty hard. Yep, playing this game triggered my depression like nothing else. My mental state hasn't been that low since middle school. So before I spoil the game rotten, I can say that if you have anxiety or depression, I don't recommend this game. Not because it's bad, but because it could be harmful mentally. That being said, another reason to look into a re-review is because the game is now being sold for money. Plus does offer extra content, but after all these years, I think this approach works. See, when I was doing reviews my first few seasons, I wasn't reviewing games like I do now. Some of the games deserve a new video, I think, and this has happened to be one of them. Some I'll be combining into two previous videos, some into one. For now, Doki Doki I'll be hitting the main game and then going over the differences from the original as I go along. So it's time to take on the foe from almost 4 years ago. Let's take on Monika! Time for a rematch! So the original game of Doki Doki Literature Club starts out like a regular dating sim style interactive novel. You can begin hanging out with Natsuki, Yuri, or Sayuri. See, Sayuri is your best friend. She's an adorable goofball who has clumsy tendencies. She also joined the literature club for some reason and wants you to check it out. There you meet Yuri and Natsuki as well as Monika, though your character seems to know her as well. Anyway, your character likes cute girls. The club turns into a poetry reading slam and your character writes poetry to impress 3 out of 4 girls who all have their own unique personalities. Yuri's intense and kind of creepy but good-natured, and Natsuki is a tsundere, smaller girl. With Sayuri hitting the best friend trope, these girls don't seem too unique. Anyway, after reading some poetry and either befriending or pissing off the girls, eventually Sayuri, the happy-go-lucky girl, starts to spiral. See, Sayuri has pretty bad depression, covering it up with her best friend, with her clumsy, happy-like personality. More and more, her poetry reflects how bad things are getting. Regardless, you and the club work on setting up an event for the club during a special school festival, and you end up working on something with either Natsuki or Yuri. Sayuri gets jealous, and no matter what happens, you find a terrifying poem and find Sayuri's hanging body after a suicide. Now, suicide isn't something to be taken lightly, and as much as the game suddenly doesn't really know what to do about one of the girls suddenly being dead. Yeah, the game starts crashing and all the save data is deleted. In restarting the game, Sayuri is gone completely, leaving a garbled mess of picture in her place. Clearly the game demonstrates something is going on here, and that the game didn't intend for this to happen. Now you can repeat the days again, but only with Monika, Natsuki, and Yuri. You can try and either date Yuri or Natsuki, but eventually Yuri's obsessive traits take over, making her super aggressive and bringing out her negative traits. See, all the girls have negative traits, like Sayuri's depression. Natsuki is abused by her father, giving away to her aggressive nature and smaller stature with malnutrition. Yuri, on the other hand, has obsessive and compulsive issues, becoming obsessed with certain feelings quickly and explaining her jump into horror and her cutting. Yuri cuts herself possibly due to anxiety or some type of sexual thrill. It was never really made clear. All of this is getting worse and worse until Yuri confesses to you. No matter what you pick, Yuri ends up stabbing herself and killing herself due to her obsession with bleeding, I suppose. The game breaks again, leaving you in the classroom with her for quite a while. After speeding through several days of broken code and conversation, Natsuki comes in and breaks you out of the loop, but out of shock, vomits at the dead body and runs off. Monika enters next, deleting the body as well as Natsuki, revealing that she can manipulate code of the game. She actually did this to her friends, making their bad traits worse until death eventually happened. She eventually takes over the game, revealing that she isn't in love with your player character, rather you on the outside of the game itself. After completely shattering the fourth wall and trying to take you for herself, you eventually find the coding of the game and delete her like she did her friends. She restores the game, but then Sayuri kinda takes over, breaking the fourth wall. Oops. The game is deleted and the credits roll. So obviously the main draw of these games is either the writing or adult content. Since this isn't an adult game rather than a horror game, it's writing all over the damn place. I think the characters are familiar but unique enough to set themselves apart, and the horror elements aren't scary, but are very uncomfortable situations. Overall, the writing is brilliant. The concept is good and the characters work well with this type of game. You end up rooting for these characters, which leads to kind of a miserable time altogether. However, when I say miserable, that is kind of the point of the game. This game is supposed to be unsettling and uncomfortable as it is a horror game. Basically, it's that old adage of not all horror has to be scary after all. Part of what makes this is the visuals. Things like seeing Sayuri hanging herself or Yuri's dead body slowly decompose over the in-game weekend is absolutely dreadful. Meanwhile, most of the other visuals leading up to these events are glitched, cute, or very unsettling. Even the music reflects this by distorting the main tune in very different ways. Honestly, this all looks and sounds fantastic. Having the right amount of cutesy charm, mood whiplash, really gets you questioning things all the time in this game. Although calling this a video game is a bit of overhyping. This isn't a video game in the traditional sense. No matter what you do, you get roughly the same ending with some possible slightly different results. You barely interact with the game in question as well. More or less, the game is actually a visual novel with little interaction from the player. Oh, it does happen from time to time though, it's just limited. You write poems. And by write poems, I mean you click on words that you think one of the Dokis might like. You also pick a few options here and there in the classroom. Yep, that's it. It's more or less trying to court one of the girls, playing into the dating sim part of the game pretends to be. Overall, nothing here outside of a secret or two. As such, there really aren't levels in the same sense as a regular video game either. The first part of the game has more to do with the poetry though. Yeah, you play the game like a dating sim, so which Doki you hang out with in court depending on your word picks, and choices on certain events. For example, Natsuki and Yuri argue in class. Who do you pick to side with changes how Yuri, Natsuki, or even Sayuri looks at you later on. Later on, if you pick to help one of the girls, basically Natsuki or Yuri, setting up for the school festival, you can get closer to one of these girls. However, overall, this leads to Sayuri's downfall regardless. But it's not like you can pick Sayuri anyway. The second portion of the game is more or less you trying to do the same thing for Yuri or Natsuki, but Yuri eventually takes control regardless of the situation. This second part is just for you to experience how the game is going through the coding nightmare with Monika's tampering. Your choices affect even less this time around. Last and the most interactive is the third phase when Monika takes over the entire game. You can either listen to Monika talk forever, or go into the game's files and delete her to get the ending. Now, this is where things get a little interesting. See, originally this was a PC-only game, and you had to actually go into the real game files to accomplish this. To simulate this on console, whenever you click to exit the game option, you are basically sent to a mock desktop playable within the game. Yep, Doki Doki Literature Club Plus has a mock desktop instead. Here you can play the main game, go into the files, access emails for more lore, I guess, and hit up the side stories. Overall though, there is very little interaction on the overall game, but when you look into the desktop to unlock secrets and artwork, things get a little more interesting. The original Doki Doki Literature Club had a few hidden secrets around here. The main one was an alternate ending. None of the alternate endings are happy, just to let you know. If you save and go back and forth in the first section of the game trying to spend as much time with all four girls, Sayuri will thank you instead of going nuts at the end of the game and taking over. Monika still deletes the game, so it's more bittersweet over the original depressing ending. This also showcases all the old artwork the main artist Satchel made. Yes, I know their name. I follow them on Twitter. Their art section is awesome, so I'm definitely plugging them while I have a chance. Anyway, in Doki Doki Literature Club Plus, you actually unlock a gallery with all this artwork on display. So getting the best ending also allows you to look at the pictures whenever you want. Neat. You also unlock a place to view all the poetry from the different characters. Different poems unlock depending on who you write poetry for and choices you make. Awesome. In Plus, if you do certain tasks, you also unlock different artwork and concept art, which is fun and nice to see how far the game came. These tasks range from tasks like using the word horror in a poem, not using the skip option while hanging out with Yuri's dead body, to playing the game multiple times. If you unlock all the poems from the character, you also unlock a special poem from them in Plus. To do this, you have to go through the side stories, though. The side stories are literally a bunch of feel-good stories from the side world where Monika didn't go crazy, and recounting how all the girls became friends. A nice palate cleanser from the main game for sure. The writing in these side stories works well, and the character's growth for all 4 characters. Sayuri is more open about her depression and dealing with it better. Monika has control issues. Yuri has social anxiety and some OCD tendencies. And Natsuki has shit friends. Honestly, these actually made me like Natsuki and Yuri more. Characters I wasn't the biggest fan of originally. Sayuri's still best girl for me overall, though. With all the possible secrets and unlocks in the new Plus version of the game, it makes me want to actually play more, bringing more interactivity for the player. Look, if I'm going to be honest, it is very difficult to give this game a score based on the fact that it's a visual novel game and they typically are more like choose-your-own-adventure books over other video games. Even then, though, there's little in the way of different endings. Still, as visual novels go, I think the concept and charm of this game gives this game more meaning. If I had to give the game a score, I'd probably go with an 8 out of 10. The game, for what it sets out to do, is great in my opinion. Do I think the Plus version is worth $15 more than the original? Not specifically, but I don't think $15 is a bad price for the overall entire package. I always felt that the original being free was an absolute steal anyway, so $15 is actually pretty fine for me. Hell, I'd pay $30 for the physical copy of the game because it came with extra goodies. Yep, I'm a nerd. Overall, I think Doki Doki Literature Club Plus is great. The writing, charm, secrets are fantastic. The only real issue is the limited interactivity and the levels limiting this more. However, these kinds of things are to be expected from a visual novel type game, so I'm cutting it slack for it. Still, the experience was fun to revisit. Worst case scenario, if you have a PC, you can still get the original for free. Missing the secret unlocks, the gallery, and all the improved visuals, but it is there. But this is all the time I have to gush about Doki Doki Literature Club Plus. And all the time I have for my rematch with Monika. If you liked the video, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell for live notifications, and click my profile for other reviews. Until next time, my minions, take care.